Well, as they say, better late than never. Here I am finally to give my post game reaction to this Rams and Panthers game. And obviously, whatever people want to say about how ugly this game was, how the Rams could have played cleaner, they had a lot of mistakes. The thing that I take away from this is I'm just happy that we are at the point where we are not talking about offseason football because it got kind of close in this Rams game to be able to start talking about those off-season topics, talking about the end of season wrap-up stuff, and I was not ready to be talking about that, especially considering the Carolina Panthers who we were playing. This is a game that even though we lost earlier in the year, I felt confident that the Rams were going to be able to go into Carolina and take this win. And I'll just be honest, I thought the Rams, even with the loss earlier in the year, were going to win by 10 points. I predicted 27-17. It's hard to get score predictions right. I understand that. But shout out to the Panthers. They came to play today. It was like the Rams, yeah, they had their mixture of mistakes. You obviously think of that Puka drop. That could have been a touchdown. You think of when Stafford missed Devontae. You think of those little things throughout the game. The Rams had a bunch of penalties today. So, yes, the Rams shot themselves in the foot, and they did a lot of things where you're like, man, like if we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot here. But you also got to give credit to the Carolina Panthers. And that team came to play today. The environment, everything was electric there. And I'm just happy that this Rams season didn't come to a close here. Just it would have been such an abrupt close to a season that had expectations on it. And that's what I'm so happy about. It's like going into this game, yeah, I expected to win, but I'm not going to lie. Like late in that fourth quarter, when Bryce Young hit Coker there for a touchdown, that last touchdown that the Panthers had, I was like, man, like, are we really going to be packing our bags and that's just going to be it for the season? Like that thought went through my head. And that last drive that the Rams were able to put together there with Matthew Stafford as he goes by the Soul Stealer for the Rams, that last drive was just pinnacle Rams. What a comeback win there. And what it really reminded me of was last year in Philadelphia in the divisional round when the Rams were marching down the field in a game where it looked like they were going to lose in the snow. The Rams were putting together a drive, beating that kind of soft prevent coverage, gets past the Eagles' 50-yard line. They continue to drive, and obviously we had that false start, and then we had Jalen Carter sack, and then it's incomplete, season over. So that drive was looking promising for the Rams last year, and our heart just got ripped out after what happened. This year, the Rams had redemption in doing it. They had the ball close to last. I mean, they gave the Panthers the ball back with like under 20 seconds left. So close to last to redeem what happened last year. And the Rams were actually able to go together and put that drive together, get the game-winning touchdown. Who would have predicted it would be Colby Parkinson on a 50-50 ball? As soon as that ball was launched from Matthew Stafford, I was like, oh, this is going to Puka, no doubt, or Devontae. And it's Colby Parkinson, who's been one of the most ascending players for this Rams team, considering where he was a year ago. So for me, so cool to be able to see the Rams right their wrongs, even with how poorly that they played today and how good the Panthers played and how close that game really came. I'm thankful as a fan that I get to talk another week about the Rams being in contention with this shot. They made it past the first round, and who knows from here on out. I know it's an ugly win, but we got it out of there with a win, and that makes me very happy as a Rams fan with how close they came there, just because you know what the Rams' expectations are, you know the roster that they've built, you know the coaching that they have, and you know that they can beat anybody. They have weird games like this. They have games where it can be close calls, but just get out of there with a win, and that's really what matters here. So just kind of getting into some of my thoughts with it. An uncharacteristic game for the Rams while the Panthers played well. The flags is they talked about this a lot on the broadcast that the Rams are one of the least penalized teams in the entire NFL. And this has been years in the making that they have just gotten better and better at just not committing penalties, very disciplined. And today the Rams had 9 flags for 83 yards. And that was both on the offense and on the defense. There were some costly ones in there. And those really did end up hurting the Rams. And it was just one of those things where it just felt like the Rams were playing sloppy in this game. And another reason why you're happy that you get a win to be able to correct these things in a win and hopefully play better next week. But that was something that you could just kind of notice right away, like 9 flags, 83 yards. That's not what you want to see. And that's not very typical for this Rams team. They were also 3 for 13 on third down. This Rams offense was moving the ball well, especially in that first half. But third downs, the Panthers did a really good job of being able to keep things in front. They actually blitzed Matthew Stafford a lot this game, just bringing a lot of different kinds of pressures, and their corners played a heck of a day today. Both J.C. Horn and Mike Jackson just lived up to their names today. You just felt with the pass breakups that Mike Jackson had on Devontae Adams, obviously he had the interception. J.C. Horn did get beat on that double move by Puka Nacua that Puka did drop. I was still impressed with what the Panthers were able to do. But yeah, Rams offense 3 for 13 on third down. So that's something we're not accustomed to seeing as Rams fans on this offensive side of the football. 3 for 13, then the flags 9 for 83 in total for the team. I did feel like the Rams dominated the first half of this game. At one point, the Rams were up 17-3 in this game. And if you actually go back to before halftime, so as I said, the Rams were up 17-7 at one point. It could have been 24-7 or 20-7. If you guys remember all the way back to that, we had that little deep ball to Devontae Adams that Stafford missed. We punt it. The punt gets muffed. Troy Reeder gets on it. And we go for it on that drive. Don't get anything. So we stay at 17-14 going into half. And you almost had another opportunity to get a touchdown there. When you're up 17-14, you almost got another touchdown heading into half there. It was a very uncharacteristic drop by Puka Nacua. So you go to the half at 17-14, you left points on the board, and that really hurt because you're like, man, I feel like we're shooting ourselves in the foot. But we got to be careful with this Panthers team because they're playing a crazy good game right now. And that is just kind of what it felt. It felt like this Rams offense, they were able to move the ball, but there were just times where it felt like the momentum was swinging. That home field advantage was really getting to the Panthers defense, fueling them to play well. And you had certain plays, obviously Stafford banged up his thumb or his finger on one of those throws, and you could tell that affected certain things. But it felt like at one point the rhythm was just a little bit off for this offense, and they had to kind of refine themselves, and they obviously did later in the game. But just looking at this graphic alone here with all the different scores, obviously biggest lead that the Rams had in this game, 17-7. And at that point, it's 17-14, 17-17, 2017, 2024. It's going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But at the end of the day, when the Rams offense needed to lock in and get a score to be able to go up, you give the ball into number 9's hands and good things happen. We saw this in Seattle. It's unfortunate the Rams lost that game, but he did it multiple times in that game, including in overtime. They obviously lost that one. He has another opportunity to do it again. And this is the guy that lives for those kinds of moments, to be able to put together those drives, to be able to orchestrate the comeback and to steal the souls of the people in the stadium. That's what he does best. And he just really tore apart that defense. As I talked about earlier, it really did remind me of against the Eagles last year, the kind of drive they were putting together before Jalen Carter got the sack and then incomplete after that. It did feel like that, but this time the Rams finished it off, and just incredible catch by Colby Parkinson to be able to high point that one, get his feet in. Was really impressed with that catch for a tight end. That's impressive, let alone just any NFL player there. So something I found really interesting about this game, last game, and this was a big key for me going into this game, the Panthers in the first meeting really committed to running the ball. They ran it 40 times if you include Bryce Young's runs, and they didn't have a lot of big runs, but they were consistently getting 4 to 5 yards. This time, if you just combine between the Rams offense and the Panthers offense, there were 80 combined passes and 46 combined run plays between both teams. So this game was very different, a lot more passing between both sides. And the Rams did a good job of stopping the run for the Panthers, didn't let them just get a bunch of those good carries. But the Panthers did find some weaknesses on the Rams defense, especially on some of those deep dig routes. You saw it on a couple of those 9 balls, those streak routes. They were able to find some success there. And it felt like at random times, Bryce Young just clutched up and made a really good throw. But you did kind of feel like vulnerabilities in the secondary there on those deep dig routes, on some of those, streak routes. So this game was a little bit different because it didn't feel as much like the Panthers were just relying on the run game, wearing us out there. They had some longer drives, but they also just had a lot of big plays. And that's kind of what kept this momentum going. On top of their defense making some key stops, on top of their defense getting an interception, obviously on top of the punt block that ended up happening. But the Rams were able to overcome all of that. And I just thought it was interesting to see how different this game played out, where it wasn't as much of the run games taking over and dominating like it did the first time. It was more of those explosive plays that the Panthers were able to find. And that's what was really electrifying their offense in this kind of way. Because even if you go down to that first matchup when we played the Panthers, one of the big storylines in this game is that they had 2 fourth-down conversions that went for touchdowns and a long third-down conversion that went for a touchdown. Today, the Panthers were 0 for 3 on 4th down, and that was a big improvement for the Rams defense compared to the last time. And as I mentioned earlier, the Rams kept the Panthers to under 100 rush yards, which I thought if the Rams did that, they would have a little bit easier of a win. But either way, they were able to still find a way to win, even though the game looked a little bit different. So definitely some things to be happy about, definitely things to be able to correct. But ultimately, the biggest thing is the Rams got out of there with a win, and that's what matters. I don't care how it looks. Extend your season, continue to play games. As if you just keep doing this, you're going to get to the Super Bowl. You got to clean these things up. But if you find a way to win at the end of the day, even if you're not playing your best football, you get the win and you move on and you correct. That's really what it comes down to here. And I was really impressed with how the Panthers played. It's unfortunate because at times when I want this Panthers team to play well against other teams to help us out, like the Seahawks or the Niners or whoever I want the Panthers to be, it feels like this team doesn't show up. But both times they played the Rams, I mean, they showed up. And I think today the home crowd really showed up for them there. So a little bit of a different looking game here for both the Rams offense versus in the Rams defense as well. In that whole kind of performance, Rams offense definitely sputtered at times. Rams defense did a better job stopping the run, but they did have those big plays go against them. Luckily, this Rams team, they've done this before, kind of unfortunately, where they have a lead and they blow it, but they were able to actually fend off the just blowing the lead that they had earlier on in the game. They're able to come back, stay resilient, and get the win. And that's really what matters. So let's see. I think I have some players of the game here for the Rams. I do. First off, some players of the game here. I mean, you could call these game balls. You could just call these players of the game, whatever you want to call it. I want to give one out to Puka Nacua. Just an incredible game. He started incredibly hot. He had like the first 3 throws go to him. He had the touchdown on the opening drive. At the end of the day, Puka Nacua had 10 catches for 111 yards and a touchdown. And he could have had more yards and a touchdown if he didn't drop that streak route earlier on in the game, if you guys remember that. But Puka Nacua, we would not be here without him. He's incredible. He is the number one. I think the take that I had in the offseason is crazy now when I said I thought Devontae Adams was going to have more yards than Puka Nacua. Like, that just looks crazy that I said that now. But Puka Nacua definitely gets a game ball for me. Matthew Stafford, even though he had the interception, even though there were a couple throws that were sprayed here and there, I think that kind of had to do with his finger. He came in and he did what he had to do. He made an MVP level throw, MVP level drive at the end of the game to be able to win. He had 304 total yards, 3 touchdowns, and interception. Played very well in this game. And again, battling through that injury, I mean, I just got to give the one to Stafford. Another one that a lot of people probably won't talk about as far as a game ball, I want to give one to Kyren Williams, because you look at his totals, it's not all that impressive when you just look at sheer numbers. He had 13 carries, 57 yards, but he had the receiving touchdown for the Rams, had a couple other dump offs that Stafford was able to give to him. But the Panthers, as I mentioned earlier, they blitzed a lot this game. And it was actually working pretty well against Stafford. Usually he just shreds the defense when they blitz, but it was working pretty well. But Kyren Williams on multiple occasions was able to get in the face of the defense and stop him before he even gets to Stafford. He gets close to touching him. So Kyren Williams, I think, deserves credit. Another guy that deserves credit here, Poona Ford. I've been talking about him, how everybody talks about Nate Landman and how that's helped the run defense. Poona Ford not only helped the run defense today, but early on, he got quite a few pressures. It was like 3 or 4 to begin the game. He had a sack, and he was just disrupting things in the middle. You really felt his presence both in the run game and the pass rush standpoint, and that was just impressive. Another guy that just doesn't really get a lot of credit for the Rams. Unfortunately, I want Poona Ford to get more credit. Colby Parkinson, obviously got to put him in here for a game ball. It's just an incredible catch here. It's weird. It feels like anytime I begin to doubt Colby Parkinson, and I'm like, why do we have this guy getting more throws to him than Tyler Higbee or more opportunities than Ferguson, whatever? He proves me wrong. I know Ferguson wasn't playing this game because he was hurt, but an incredible catch. And that's 9 touchdowns now on the year, including regular season and postseason for Colby Parkinson. And the amount of improvements he's been able to make for the Rams, and obviously he's been used a lot more this year. That catch was just incredible. I really would have thought it was a wide receiver if I just looked at it from far away. So Colby Parkinson. And my last game ball, more so just like a shout out, I guess, because he also kind of had a rough game, was just Kobe Durant making that interception early on. Because when you look and the Rams only win by 3 points in this game, if you don't get that interception early on in the first half and the Panthers do score there, the game can completely change and you can lose it. So Kobe Durant, while he didn't have a great game, I think he let up over 100 receiving yards. I do want to at least shout him out for the interception that he was able to get. So, playoff land shark, he came through. So that's definitely some guys that I want to shout out there. Some concerns here before I get to your comments. I think not necessarily a concern, more so just like confusion for this one. The Panthers lost their starting left tackle, Ikem Ekwonu, early on, and he is a very good tackle for them. The backup came in. I thought playoff Jared Verse was about to feast. And I don't know his numbers yet on how many pressures he got, what his win rate was. Just from the eye test, I was just a little disappointed that Verse wasn't able to take advantage of that early and just throughout the entire game, because Ikem Ekwonu went out very early in that game. So I definitely thought that was a big opportunity. But at the same time, you have a scrambling quarterback in Bryce Young. It just felt like Verse had an opportunity to really step up in the playoffs and make some big plays. And from the eye test early on, one watch through, only with all the emotions going and all that, I was just like a little bit disappointed there. I'm definitely still a little bit concerned about the secondary. I definitely think that the pass rush and secondary are things that go together, especially for this team. It's not just one and the other kind of entity thing. But the secondary does concern me just because there was a lot of big plays here by good players, but a lot of big plays that were happening on this defense on some crucial downs as well. I mean, Jalen Coker had 9 catches for 134 yards, a touchdown. Ted McMillan, 5 for 81. And it just feels like sometimes when we need a DB to make a play, you're just kind of left waiting there. And I think that this pass rush can help them out, and they can look really good at times, but at other times, again, it's just volatile. And so it's not like I'm worried that this is going to end our season, but I recognize that they're very volatile, and you just don't know exactly what you're going to get yet. Now, maybe with another week with Lake being back in the lineup, just kind of shaking off the rust, maybe they'll get better. But there was definitely a little bit up and down there, and it's a good thing we ended up winning this game. I do think that, Jalen Coker is a good receiver, Ted McMillan's a good receiver, and Bryce Young played very well. But there's also times where it's like, man, we're getting pressure here, and there's still a guy open. Whereas other times earlier in the season, it's like, I can understand why the cornerbacks can't cover for like 7 or 8 seconds, because nobody can cover for that long. So just hard to know what to predict with the secondary. You just need to be average, I think, with a pass rush if they can play up to what they're capable of. And that's really all I'm asking for, because I understand the Rams don't have big name corners and people in the secondary. But I think with a group of pass rushers in the secondary that they do have, the kind of game that they can play, I do think that they can play a little bit more consistent. So that's definitely a bit of a concern here. And then special teams. Harrison Mevis was really good today. Did not miss a kick, did not miss an extra point. Still has only missed 1 kick for the Rams. That was in Seattle. But he has really helped the Rams kicking woes, especially for field goal operation, that whole thing. I still sometimes get worried about field goals just because of what we saw with Josh Carty early on in the year and all the blocks and everything that happened there. But special teams still is a bit of a concern just because we saw that block happen. And I just am worried that teams are going to be able to replicate that. There's an opportunity to clean up, but it's just a little bit concerning because you could lose the game in a way of just having another punt blocked. So that's kind of my all around the board what my thoughts are in this game. This one's still very emotional to me. Just like trying to think through everything logically is hard. There were so many things that happened in this game. And as I brought up earlier, like there's just so many changes of scores here. It was back and forth. And this is how I was feeling at the end of the game. Like I was just happy we got out of there with a win. That's really what I was thinking, because you extend the season. You didn't play your best. Carolina brought their best, and you still won, and your season's extended. So that's kind of my scattered thoughts on all of this. Let me get to some of what you guys have to say. I don't really know where to jump in because some of the chat was from before I started. Let's just go to Brian's comment here. Thanks for coming in. Brian says Puka dropped a TD pass with Stafford's broken finger. Yeah, that was very weird, very uncharacteristic. As soon as the ball ripped deep on that double move, we've seen Puka hit that so many times this season, score touchdowns on that. It was so weird just to see it bounce off his hands, because he has become such a secure catcher of the football. And I don't think enough people talk about that with Puka Nacua. One of the biggest problems that he had in his rookie year, in his first 2 years, was he has struggled with drops. As good as he was, he had a good amount of drops. But this year in particular, he has become such a reliable target. He rarely ever drops the ball, even if it's contested, even if he has to do it with one hand against Atlanta. You guys know how good Puka is. That was very surprising. I'm just glad it didn't come back to haunt us. And in the fact that we would lose this game, that was just weird, though. I was like, something's up. If Puka Nacua is dropping a pass, it's almost like when we had Cooper Kupp on the Rams before. If Cooper Kupp would drop a pass, or if he fumbled the football, you're like, something weird's going on here. Like, something's not right. So that was crazy, because he could have added to his incredible day that he had, but just glad we got the win. Thanks, Brian, for saying that. Bryce Young and Carolina are like the Kyler Murray Cardinals. They give us trouble because the quarterback can run fast. Yeah, I think he can run fast. I also think he can make some incredibly clutch throws. I mean, Bryce Young and the Panthers are still very inconsistent when you just watch them throughout the season. That's definitely no doubt. But both times he played the Rams, I have to admit, he is very clutch, made a lot of crazy good throws. That last one to Coker as he's fading away that he scored right before Stafford went down and got the game-winning touchdown, I was just blown away by Bryce Young. So I feel like he's better than Kyler Murray. If you were to ask me, I understand what you're saying with the athleticism and he made plays with his legs, but he also made some incredible throws. I got to give him credit for sure. CMD Carney, thanks for coming in, says, I don't understand why the Rams didn't get 15 yards from spot of the foul on Devontae Adams, but Panthers got 15 for Nate Landman's personal foul. The ref stuff was definitely interesting in this game. I'm going to leave it at that. There were some strange calls in there. I was kind of confused by the refs at times, but we were able to overcome them enough, and I'm going to move on. Carolina was the perfect storm for us. Yeah, Brian, I don't know. I think it was you that was really worried. Not just you. There were definitely other Rams fans, but you were one of the people that were super concerned about this Panthers team going into it. And the fact that, there's familiarity with the coaches, with some of the players. I thought the Rams were going to win this game by 10. So this game was a lot closer than I thought. And I think you're right. This is just one of those weird matchups where you can say, weird things happen in this matchup that the Rams don't usually do. But to say that for 2 games, at some point you got to give credit to the Panthers. So just glad that we got out of this one with a win. CM or SM, thanks for coming in. Says the familiarity thing is real. So many ex-Rams on their team. Ever O'Canales, who was in Seattle and coached with Waldron, and then Coach Baker. Yeah, you got a lot of different guys on there. Christian Roseboom, Nick Scott, Ashawn Robinson. Which, by the way, guys, now that I bring up Nick Scott, before I keep listing Rams players that are now on the Panthers, I have to give a ton of credit to Puka Nacua for breaking up that interception Nick Scott had. It was almost 2 matchups where Nick Scott had a pick, and that one maybe would have lost us the game when Stafford just threw kind of a 50-50 ball up late in the 4th quarter there on a drive that we ended up getting a touchdown to Kyron Williams on that little Texas route. Earlier on in the drive, Stafford throws it up to Puka, and Nick Scott has the ball in his hands, and Puka Nacua breaks it up. If he doesn't do that, we may not win this game. So Nick Scott, speaking of him, he almost ended our season there, and Puka Nacua, shout out to him. He can not only catch everything in whatever way possible, he can also play defense incredibly well. So shout out to Puka. Man, it took a while to come down from this one. This could very easily be a therapy sesh. No doubt about it. I was already thinking in my mind, I was like, man, this week I'm going to have to talk about end of season Rams stuff. I'm going to have to be talking about wrapping up the season and off-season content, and I just didn't want to get into that yet. This team, with the expectations they have, the way they've built this roster, and to lose to, a team that can be dangerous, but to lose to a team that was under 500, I know that you're on the road. I was like, man, that would just be such a bad way to end the season. So I'm glad that we were able to pull out a win here for sure. CMD Carney plus Thomas Brown was OC for the Rams in 2022. Yeah, I think Thomas Brown isn't there anymore, but yeah, that's a good point. He used to be there for sure. Finally noticed the Jarquez Hunter sighting. Yeah, that was it. That was very exciting to be able to see him on the field there, making some plays on special teams. ESG says we were up 14-0, and Shula started with a prevent defense. There is definitely something to be said about this Rams team when they get a lead this season as good as they are. We saw it in the Eagles one when they were up 26-7. We saw it. I'm just going to try to rattle off the ones that I can think of in my head where the Rams were up and then they let up a team to come back. I'm sure you guys can. Oh, Seattle, obviously. That's an easy one. But there have definitely been those things where it's like, you guys remember that stat that would always come up with Sean McVay, where it's like, if Sean McVay has a lead at halftime, he is undefeated. It was like however many wins to 0 losses if he's up at halftime. That storyline this year and that narrative has definitely been tested heavily because there's been games where the Rams are up and they let a team back in for one reason or another. So hopefully the Rams are able to play a full 4 quarters, because I think that's one thing that this Rams team has struggled with this year is they haven't consistently been able to play 4 quarters of football against anybody and just completely put the hammer down, just keep scoring. Like, we've seen examples of that for sure, but it's hard. Like, you don't consistently see the Rams playing 4 quarters of football. If they can start doing that and really put a team away, that's when they can be dangerous. And luckily we have more opportunities to do that, but that's definitely something to point to and hope that the Rams get a little bit better at for sure. But just glad it didn't bite us here. Brian says this game did not surprise me one bit. I'm sure. Yeah, I remember you were pretty worried about it for sure. Paul says proven MVP, no doubt about it. Man, love having Stafford. Blocked punt today. That was rough. When you saw them loading up to try to get a block in that scenario. And that one in particular is one of those things as a fan where I just had that feeling in my stomach. I was like, I feel like this one's going to be blocked. But I almost feel like it worked out better that way if it had to happen, because then the Panthers didn't have to drive as long of a field and drain more of the clock to where maybe they would have left the Rams with nothing left on offense, no time left. So as bad as that block was, it's almost like with the way the Panthers were moving on us, especially in that second half, I was like, I'd almost rather the Panthers have the ball on our 20-yard line so the drive doesn't take as long. We get basically the last possession. That's what ended up happening. So luckily it ended up working out, but that was hard. That was just hard to watch. Let's see. Trying to see. There's a lot of different conversations going on here. Paul says our playoff secondary is suspect and it's on tape. Yeah, and I definitely think the weird thing about our secondary is, again, it's volatile. It's very volatile. It's like some weeks they can be looking like world beaters. They can be looking like, oh, nobody talks about this secondary, and they're playing crazy well. And then at other times it's like, man, if only we had we don't even need what we had Jalen Ramsey in the past for, which I loved being on the Rams. It's not like we always need that complete premier guy, but there's just times when you just felt like we need a little bit more juice there. But then other times they play really well. It's just very volatile. So hopefully they can just get consistent. And again, I know that pass rush and secondary, they blend together and they work together as one. It's not just two different things. But the pass rush, I felt like today on a lot of the reps was pretty good, and there were still guys open. And maybe that was the way the Rams were playing. They're just trying to play bend but don't break. I don't know. There's just definitely something where it's you just feel like you need a little bit more from this Rams secondary for sure. Out of the two games today, Chicago secondary is worse than the Rams. That's interesting. They definitely have bigger names, but I'm not sure if I would fully go there. I'd have to think about that one, though, for sure. ESG says, I'm hoping we play Chicago in the second round. I think we can handle Chicago. They would be scary, though, because we were just talking about how the Rams can go up and have these leads and then let a team come back in. The thing that could be scary about the Chicago Bears, obviously you're playing on the road. It's going to be a cold game. That's bad, but that's the way the Bears play. It's they'll play bad in the first half because they know they can come back, and they've gotten so many wins that way where it looks like they're going to lose, including tonight, and they come back and win. So you're going to have to hammer that even more if you're the Rams coaching staff of hey, we got a lead. Don't let up, because the Bears are the worst kind of matchup for us to be able to come back when we have a lead like that. So that would be something I'd worry about. Another personal thing is my dad's a Bears fan, so I would hate that because I already as somebody who watched my brother's team in the Super Bowl have to face mine in the Bengals. My brother's a Bengals fan, and then to watch my team play my dad's team, the Bears, which hasn't been in the playoffs in a while, it'd be tough. It would be a family affair for sure. Rob says way too many mental errors, questionable play calling by both offense and defense play callers. Once again, forced 3 pass plays and went 3 and out. Ben, don't break. See, defense will haunt us if not fixed. Definitely a lot of things to clean up in this game. I definitely want to give my credit to the Carolina Panthers. They played really well, but at the same time, multiple things can be true. The Rams also had their fair share of big mistakes. And you're just hoping there's that point in the season where the Rams rattled off 6 games in a row and they look like they were just complete world beaters. I know that's still in them. It just feels like they need to build back up to that momentum again. I don't think they need to do it to prove it to themselves, but I think the Rams need to get back in that state where it's oh man, they're playing complete 4 quarters. They're just, blowing teams out. It's going to be hard to blow teams out in the playoffs, but playing like they were in that 6-game stretch, getting back into that moment of dominance. Because I've seen a lot of people say things about the Rams barely beat the Panthers. They're probably not Super Bowl contenders anymore. People can talk all they want, whatever. But in that 6-game stretch when the Rams were just blowing out teams, playing really, really good football, they had that good momentum rolling. I think they're just getting back into that momentum again, and hopefully we clean up some of these mistakes for sure. Remind me of Dark Whiskey Tart. That Nick Scott one, that was just a good play by Puka, honestly. Brian says, I'm analytical about our Rams, hence my 37-34 score prediction in overtime. It wasn't a complete guess. Analytics is wild. It is. And the NFL is wild. This season is crazy wild. So many crazy games. It's been really fun to watch. Carolina played good, but let's be real. They really had nothing to play for. No one expected them to win. Now Seattle, that's a different story. They're going to be tight. Yeah, that's a good point. And that's what I talked about in the preview and some different things that I did this week. I was like, this Rams team has all the pressure in the world to go out and win a Super Bowl. I don't really think that makes the Rams fold because they have that pressure on them. but you do have to give credit to the Panthers and understand what the Panthers have going for them. Of nobody expected them to make the playoffs this year. Nobody expected them to be able to host a playoff game, and they're playing with house money. They're almost a year ahead of schedule, and so they're playing with house money, and that does make them a dangerous team. So there's definitely a good point for that. I thought Stafford tried to force feed Devontae early to get him going, and it messed up his hot start. There's definitely that one point is like 3 passes in a row to Devontae, and I do think that they need to connect a little bit more just because it's been weeks. Like their connection was finally starting to heat up after a bunch of different woes throughout the season and misconnections and the chemistry and all that. And then Devontae gets hurt. He's out for a while. You definitely saw that in a couple different scenarios. But that classic deep dig that Devontae does so well, they begin to connect on that again. But yeah, I definitely think that connection has to get back going again. Definitely just have to get the familiarity again, get more reps on it just because it's been a while. But yeah, I definitely felt that too. And if it's Chicago, really, after watching that game, are you scared of them? I'm not scared of them in the sense of like I don't think the Rams can beat them. I just recognize the way they play, and it plays into the hand of some of the ways that these Rams games have gone this season. Like what we just talked about with the Seahawks, like we talked about with the Eagles, like some problems that have crept up where it's like, the Rams could be up with a good lead and then they let a team back in. And like today, they were able to still come out with a win, but other times it's cost them. That would be my only concern with Chicago is that happening. Another team that's almost playing with house money. It's like they had expectations this year, but they almost feel like they're a year ahead of schedule with the way that they're playing and the way that they've been able to get some of these wins. And then cold weather in Chicago, if it snows or does something like that, those would be my things, like being a little bit concerned about Chicago. At this point, I'm like, I really do think about what Sean McVay said of respect all, fear none. I think that this Rams team can match up against anybody, but I also recognize like these games are going to be tight. They're going to be close, and that's just probably the reality of it. McVay hasn't changed in 9 years as our head coach. He's the oldest 40-year-old of all time. CMD Carney says, as nervous as I was in the third quarter, I was confident Stafford and McVay was going to win this game. Yeah, I don't even remember. It was somewhere in the third to fourth quarter where I was like, there was that realization in my head where I was like, this really could be the last game of the Rams season. Like this could maybe be the last game of Stafford's career. Like I was in that mode where I was just trying to enjoy it as much as I could and hope that they were able to claw back in it. But when Stafford had the ball on that last drive to be able to go and win the game, I was like, I think we're going to be able to move the ball as long as there's no fluky, weird turnovers that happen. I feel pretty confident. Stafford's has like over 50 game winning drives. That's just who he is. He's the soul stealer, as he calls himself. But there was definitely that point at one point in the game where I was like, geez, this just may not be our day once again. Just glad that we were able to get that one. We need this game today. We needed this challenge today. Yeah, we did. Just glad we got the win. Continue to improve for sure. This game we played better than our Super Bowl year when we were almost get a 20-point lead to Tampa Bay. I would almost argue with that on that one because the Rams played really dominant against the Bucs in that game back in 2021. They let them back in and then they fought them off. I guess it just depends on how you look at it. I feel like the Rams made a lot of mental errors and a lot of sloppy drops and different things like that. But I guess it depends on how you look at it. Either way, though, they won both of those games, so I'm happy. Green Bay is a physical team. We're a soft finesse team. Luckily, we won't have to play Green Bay. The only thing that's kind of sad about that is now that scenario of the Rams hosting a playoff game is, I believe, out of the question. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that there's no scenario that the Rams host a playoff game. But at this point, it's like Rams go on the road. They can beat anybody. They don't need to be at home. That just would have been a nice luxury if that could happen. But if Chicago was underdog in their first round game, I expect them to be underdogs the rest of the way. I'm guessing that's probably the way they like it. They probably like being the underdogs, but they're definitely a vulnerable team. There's a lot of vulnerabilities. I've seen a lot of Bears games just with my dad being a Bears fan. Close to every one of them has been on this season that I've been able to at least watch a little bit of. So I definitely understand that they're an underdog team. They're a team, though, that you really cannot sleep on, even if you're up on a lead. Like they have that kind of weird thing where they'll be able to come back and pull out a win or make it really close. So if the Rams end up playing them, that's going to be a fun challenge for sure. Definitely a lot of things the Rams can take advantage of, but not a team to take lightly for sure. Rams are 2 wins away from the Super Bowl. Isn't that fun? That is, That almost gives me goosebumps there. Who do you guys think that we're going to play next? Because we got the 49ers and the Eagles tomorrow. We know the Bears won tonight. We obviously won. Who do you guys think that the Rams are going to play next? I don't even know what the whole scenarios are. Is it if the 49ers win, they would head to Seattle and then Chicago, or we would head to Chicago? I think that's what the scenario is, but I'm not exactly sure. Chicago isn't scary at all. I'm not scared of them. I just recognize that there's ways that, like, if you just hold off, kind of like we talked about earlier, if you hold off too long, they'll come back. But the Rams, as long as they clean up mistakes, I feel confident they can beat anybody. McVay is the only one who beats us. Let's see. Rams Mob says Rams could host the. Oh, by the way, I like that profile picture. That's really cool. Rams could host the 49ers in the NFC Championship game. Okay, I guess that's true, but there's no scenario next round in the divisional round that the Rams could host a game. But yeah, that's true. In the NFC Championship game, throwback to 2021, the 49ers come to SoFi Stadium. Wouldn't that be interesting? Because like that one in 2021, Rams were hosting the NFC Championship game to be able to win that and then go to the Super Bowl in their stadium. In this case, the Rams could host the NFC Championship game, beat the Niners, and play the Super Bowl in the Niners stadium, which would be a whole lot of fun. But obviously, we saw how hard it was just to win this game today. So we just got to continue to stack together wins and get to that point. I think Jake Ellenbogen said if Niners win, we could host them in SoFi in the NFC Championship game. So earlier, I think Jake did say that because if the 49ers won and the Packers won today, the Rams would host the Niners in the divisional round. But being that the Packers lost, NFC Championship game at SoFi is the only possibility here. I think Seattle is going to be our next opponent. Let's see. Is it even possible? I don't think it's possible to play them in the divisional round. All these scenarios are crazy, but it would be the championship game. I could be wrong on that, though. More likely Eagles versus Rams. I agree with that. No, we're not having any home games. Like people said, it would just be the championship game, I think, against the Niners. That would be the only thing. ESG, here's the playoff scenarios that I need here. So if Niners win, we go to Chicago. If they lose, we go to Seattle. No home games. Okay, unless it's the championship game, I guess. So the Niners would have to win, and then they would have to beat Seattle, and then we'd have to beat them, but we'd be at SoFi. So a lot of things up in the air. Honestly, the Rams just got to win whoever they play. The Rams are currently considered the second best favorite to win the Super Bowl. Yeah, right behind the Seahawks. And they were even at that in the lowest point of the season when they lost to the Falcons and all the people were panicking. The Rams are still the second best in terms of odds of winning the Super Bowl. So that speaks to the team that they have. I just really think if they can get that momentum rolling again, if they can eliminate some of those errors that they're doing to themselves, they can get to that point where they look like the complete best team in football again. Because while they won this game today, they didn't look like they were the best team in football. There were a lot of things to clean up and to be able to correct. But that's also encouraging because they're able to come out with a win. And if they correct those things, I think that this team can look more dominant and come out with more of a convincing win. I think this game today reminded me a lot of some of the errors that the Rams had earlier on in the season that they had to overcome and correct before they went on that run. And some of those errors is dropped passes. We saw that a lot earlier on in this Rams season, whether it was Devontae Adams, whether it was like Blake Corum and Kyren Williams out of the backfield, or Colby Parkinson or some of the tight ends. Rams struggled with drops early on in the year, and that was one way they're shooting themselves in the foot, especially in key scenarios. Another thing that the Rams were struggling on earlier in the year was special teams, and we saw that kind of creep up today with that blocked punt. Now, the kicking operation was so much better, and I don't want to take away credit from that, but you saw that come up. You also saw scenarios where the Rams weren't great on third down. That was another thing that they weren't great at earlier on in the year that they were able to overcome. So these are things where it's like these self-inflicted wounds, as annoying as they are, you're happy they got out with a win because they've proven that they can correct these things. It's just annoying how they kind of came back up in the playoffs because you do have to eliminate these things. If you do this kind of game against whoever you play next, really whoever you play from here on out, aside from maybe the Bears, you probably lose the game. So these things are going to have to be cleaned up. Otherwise, your season could be over at any point. Who's the first? If you're talking about who's the first seed, the Seahawks are the first seed, but I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that. we can knock off the Seahawks, and we know it. We definitely can. That's legit. I mean, Stafford put up over 450 yards on what people claim is a top defense in the league, and I agree. The Seahawks are a top defense in the league, but without Devontae Adams on a short week in Seattle, Matthew Stafford put up over 450 yards on that Seahawks team, put up back-to-back game-winning drives in that game, and unfortunately, Sam Darnold had the ball last, and we all know how that played out. I know that we can beat the Seahawks. The Seahawks are going to be a tough out, and I believe it's going to be a close game, but I know we can knock them out. I know we can knock anybody out. We can beat anybody. As weird as the game was today and as many mistakes as we made today, I truly think we can beat anybody. It's just, do the Rams, that kind of Rams team, show up? If they make those mistakes, are they able to stay resilient and keep themselves in the game? The season this year has shown that the Rams, even if they're playing really weird games, they can at least still keep it close. And like in that Falcons game, we played terribly and that we still almost won. So the Rams team can beat anybody. Seahawks, I really wish we could have beaten them in the regular season, but it would be pretty sweet if we beat them in the playoffs at their place, wouldn't it? Knowing that we can beat the Seahawks and doing it are different things, have to show they want to. That's a good point, because, we talked about all this week, at least I was, a lot of the times I was like, I'm very confident that this Rams team is going to beat the Panthers. I just feel that confident. I thought they're going to win by 10 points. And there's a lot of times you can play as an NFL fan, the on paper game of, well, we got the better coach, we got the better roster. I understand it's who plays better in that window, but I feel confident in my team. And it really is just who plays better in that window that you have. It doesn't matter your record. It doesn't matter what you've done on the year. You can have a weird game, and that could be your season. So that's definitely a good point of, we can beat the Hawks, but we have to show that we do and that we want to in that game. That is definitely a good point. It says, whose house? Rams house. You know it. The Stafford-led 71-yard game-winning drive was amazing. That was, oh man, we've seen so many cool moments with Matthew Stafford in these game-winning drives, these comeback scenarios. Having him at quarterback, it's just, I think about it so many times as a luxury of having a quarterback who has seen every kind of coverage, every kind of defense, has played with any different kind of receiver that you could really ask for, the different kinds of situations he's been put in, the comebacks he's had to lead in Detroit, coming to LA, all the knowledge he has in LA, how well he knows the system. It's crazy the amount of confidence that we have as Rams fans in Matthew Stafford to be able to have these game-winning drives, because most teams in the NFL, probably 2/3 of the league wouldn't have that same kind of confidence that we do in Stafford. And we got to appreciate it, because no matter how good the quarterback is that comes in after Matthew Stafford leaves the Rams and retires, it's going to be a drop-off in one sense or another, whether it be from a knowledge perspective or a skill standpoint. There's probably not going to be another guy that's just going to come into the Rams doing no looks, just being able to manipulate the coverages that way, who has one of the prettiest throws that I've seen. There's just so many things about Matthew Stafford where it's like, I think we take it for granted. And just to be able to experience another one of those game-winning drives in the playoffs, I believe I saw that now Matthew Stafford has the most playoff wins for a Rams quarterback, which in franchise history, which is really dang cool. So Matthew Stafford, I wouldn't want anybody else at quarterback for the Rams. Proven MVP, but got to do it 3 more games. Hey, he did it in the Super Bowl year. He had to win 4 games in the playoffs, and I feel pretty confident that the Rams can do it. It's going to be close, though. Stafford drive was amazing, but really shouldn't have come down to it. Game should have been put away early and should have just been asked to kneel at the end of the game. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of those things, and that's, again, where it felt like those issues from earlier on in the year that the Rams struggled with, self-inflicted wounds, were coming back to bite them, as well as things of the Panthers playing well. So you're definitely right about it. It shouldn't have been to that point. As I bring up this graphic again of what the score was at one point, let me actually take this comment down here real quick so you guys can see that better. At one point it was 17-7, and at one point the Rams were almost able to extend the lead. I believe it was 24-7 or 24-14 right before half. Then you had that drop touchdown. So definitely shouldn't have come down to it. But the fact that the Rams were able to hold on, again, I was definitely feeling like this at the end of the game, just like happy our season's still alive, to be honest. Let's see. It's like having Kobe's killer instinct. It really is. He's like, I just feel like this season in particular, us Rams fans have known how good Matthew Stafford is, and we've been able to watch it. This is no doubt his best season that he's had in his NFL career with the Rams as well. It's just unbelievable, the things he's able to do. And I really don't know if you can point to a more clutch quarterback in the NFL. A lot of people point to Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen that they would want to have them in those 2-minute drills. I'm like, why are you just overlooking Matthew Stafford? The amount of game-winning drives he's put together, including the Super Bowl, the amount of times that he's had these comebacks, the amount of times that he's able to will his team back into a game, like I really do think he gets overlooked at times. I'm just glad that this season he's getting a little bit more of that kind of attention with him being the MVP conversation. It is crazy though how a lot of people are still like, "Oh no, Drake May is definitely the MVP of the league because Matthew Stafford just throws 1-yard touchdown passes." It's like, do you really watch Rams games? Like, are you really that locked in and seeing what he's doing? So, I don't know. Josh, thanks for coming in. Says, "Are you happy with our performance? I honestly hated the way we played, and I can't stand our inconsistency." I can understand where you're coming from. I would say I'm happy with the way the Rams were able to still get the win today. But if you continue to do this moving forward, you probably aren't going to win a lot of games, and you probably won't do what you're set out to do in these playoffs. And inconsistency is definitely a frustrating thing because, like, the Rams are a team that can kind of, as they say, play with their food a little bit, have these mistakes and still win games. And that just shows the margin for error that they have with how as good of a roster that they have in coaching. But you don't want to have them to have to climb back in games like this that they should win pretty handily. And you don't want them to be making these mistakes that a veteran team shouldn't be making. So I am frustrated with the inconsistency. I'm annoyed that sometimes these scenarios come up where we have to be tested again and again to go out and win a game. It's fun when you win the game at the end of the day, but I I think survive and advance is definitely a real thing. Just survive and advance in the playoffs. That is what the Rams needed to do. They got it done. Inconsistency is frustrating. These mistakes that you know that they can be better at is frustrating. I think for me, like I talked about earlier, I'm just happy we're not talking about off-season content right now. We're not talking about ending and wrapping up the season. We get to enjoy at least another week of Rams football. And if we see these issues come up again next week, whoever we play, even if we get the win, it's definitely going to be a little bit concerning just based on the fact of like these issues shouldn't keep creeping back up, but just continue to win, advance, and move on from there. That's just kind of where I'm at. CMD Carney says, shout out to Colby Parkinson. Definitely agree with that. Colby Parkinson, I have to continually apologize for some of the thoughts I had about him going into this season of thinking like we should just trade him, we should just cut him. Like we don't need Parkinson. Last year we overpaid him. He did nothing for us. He had a lot of drops. Like it was a very disappointing contract at the time. Really felt like we weren't getting any use out of him. It almost felt like the Tutu Atwell contract. But even when he got his opportunities last year, it just felt like he didn't really do much with them. This year, Colby Parkinson, while he's had his moments of drops and things that you're just frustrated with, like he has been a much improved player. I talked about it, the 9 total combined touchdowns between regular season and postseason this year. And he's continuing to impress me. Every time I doubt him, he just does something that I don't even think he's capable of doing. So shout out to Colby Parkinson, as you said, and taking him from the Seahawks makes it a little bit sweeter for sure. 50 degrees forecasted for Seattle next weekend versus 20 degrees in Chicago. Possible snow if they play on Saturday. I want Seattle. We have to knock them out regardless. Thanks for that little update there. That definitely makes a big difference. 20 degrees in Chicago, possible snow with the way that fan base was. Al Michaels was talking about it tonight. That was the loudest he's ever heard Soldier Field in his whole broadcasting career. He's been doing it for a while. So all those things of what you talked about, I'm kind of agreeing with you here, and I want to play Seattle in their place. I think it would be really cool to do it in the NFC Championship game to beat them and head to the Super Bowl. But beggars can't be choosers. Like knock the Seahawks out whenever it counts, and if it's going to be better weather, yeah, I think I'd probably rather play in Seattle. But just trying to think through the scenarios in my head again. So would it be if the Eagles beat the Niners tomorrow, the Rams would head to Seattle next week, or do I have that wrong? I don't know why. I don't have the graphic in front of me, so I'm not sure what the whole scenarios are. But Rams Mob says a win is a win, especially in the playoffs. I'm with you there. There's a lot of people really frustrated about the way the Rams played today. I had to address it in this post game just because I'm not going to ignore things that they did wrong and things that they can improve on. But by no means am I like, man, I'm just mad that the Rams didn't win in the way that I wanted them today. It's like, no, Rams won in the playoffs. They played a team that was playing with house money. I'm just happy that we're not talking about end of season content. That's where I'm at. I know that they could have played better, but they won the game, and that's what matters. So good point there, Rams Mob. Did you see that mean helmet to helmet that Higbee took early? I did. There were a couple of those calls. Like I said earlier, I don't like complaining about the refs, but the Panthers, let me see if I can find it. Felt like the Panthers barely had any penalties and the Rams just continually got penalties. One scenario, do you remember when I believe it was Colby Parkinson got brought down by, it might have been, I'm trying to remember who it was. It was one of their edge rushers. And the guy kind of got up, flexed, and pushed him over like way after the play, and the refs didn't say anything. And then that Des Johnson play on the kickoff was like an immediate taunt. Like there were just some weird things like that. So just glad that it didn't cost the Rams, and it's not like we don't have that weird conversation of, oh, like if the refs didn't do this, the Rams would have won. Because like that conversation always gets old. But Rob says Rams mob Seattle if Dotson comes back. Chicago if not. Stafford okay in the snow, but need to run block for our backs in Seattle. That's a good point. I feel like the main issue is our defense as well as our lack of coverage. Our corners absolutely blow. I love Durant and Witherspoon, but I just miss having a lockdown corner like we did Ramsey. Yeah, shout out Jalen Ramsey, my favorite player in Rams history. Just the way he played, such a fun play style. Like a corner that can tackle like that can play that physical, that has that just personality and that mentality of like, I'm just going to lock you down. Definitely miss having a guy like him. And like I said earlier, I don't think for this Rams team to be a Super Bowl winner, I don't think they need a guy like that. It would be a great luxury. I do think the cornerbacks that they have that they can survive with and be able to get to a Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl. But I think the margin for error for the team goes a little bit thinner when you have the cornerbacks that you do now, just because you just don't know what you're going to get from them. And I love the players. I love supporting them. Kobe Durant is a really fun personality and makes some splash plays. And there's by no means where I'm like, this cornerback room is trash. Just get them all out of here. But like, I have to acknowledge, like, there's times that they legitimately struggle, and that can cost you a game. So we'll see if the Rams address that in the offseason. I know a lot of people were kind of clamoring for that. And a lot of people the last 2 years have been like, the Rams are going to draft a corner, or the Rams are going to trade for one. They're going to sign one. Rams are going to get Ramsey back, all of that. And the Rams just usually stick with the guys that they have. This year, maybe they end up doing that. But I really think that this Rams team still can win the Super Bowl. And I don't want to say will win the Super Bowl, but I really do feel confident that this team can win the Super Bowl with the cornerbacks and the secondary that they have. It's just that margin for error conversation where maybe it's a little bit thinner with this group that you have, just because you don't know what you're going to get, and there's good receivers out there. So Niners win, Rams go to Chicago. 49ers win, they go to Seattle. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that. Oh, 49ers lose. I see what you mean. Okay, thanks for the update there. I appreciate it. The 2025 NFL All-Pro team includes players like Matthew Stafford and Puka Nacua. That's absolutely awesome. I think I'm most happy for Matthew Stafford, and that's nothing against Puka Nacua, but like so happy that Stafford finally gets his first All-Pro appearance here. Just like it really does feel like all the overdue Stafford credit is finally coming for him this year, and I'm just loving that he's finally getting this kind of recognition. So happy for him because he deserves it. Rams Showcase. If you guys don't know who Rams Showcase is, absolutely killer podcast on the Rams every week. Drops, I believe, Thursday or Wednesday night is when the podcast drops. So definitely check him out. He says, whew, I'm with you there, Rams Showcase, especially right after the game. I was just like I was so happy we won, but I felt exhausted. Like that was a fun win, but those ones take it out of you for sure. Lowest seed will go to Seattle. So yeah, the Niners, if they win, yeah, they'll go to Seattle. That makes sense. Troy Reader, he's still here. It cracked me up when he had that fumble recovery on that punt play, because one of Peo Time's what's more likely is on Wednesday. I don't remember what it was like compared between, but it was like, what's more likely, Troy Reader makes a play, like any play of significance for celebration, or like something crazy happens. So anytime Troy Reader makes a play now, I just inherently think of Peo Time. I'm still waiting for his pick six, just so Peo Time's dreams are fulfilled there. So dude got so many haters. Yeah, like, to be honest, like I've been one of those people that are like, dang it, Troy Reader, like frustrated at him. Like I don't verbally trash him, whatever. But anytime he makes a play, I'm happy for him. And I still think it's funny whenever he broke up that pass and he did the straps thing at linebacker. Like that's hilarious to me. Red Eye 54 says ugly win, but we'll take it, I guess. Or ugly win, but I'll take it. C's. I think you mean I'll take it, I guess. Honestly, yeah, that's just what it is. I think if you go out and you make a Super Bowl run and you win the Super Bowl, really, if the Rams were to go out and win the Super Bowl and they won each game 6-7, or why did I pick those two numbers? I walked right into that one. If they won 17-14, let's just say like that, or 3-2, whatever. If the Rams end up winning the Super Bowl, nobody's going to care what the scores are, and probably most people won't remember what the scores in those games were. The biggest thing is taking the win, moving on, advancing. That's the name of the game. They don't count how many points you win by. So ugly win for sure. Got to clean those things up, but I'm with you. Just glad we got the win. Striker's Corner says, I want to beat Seattle. I hope we go to Seattle. I think really it's inevitable. It's just a matter of when we play them. Like, is it going to be in the divisional round? Is it going to be the championship round? I really do think it is going to come down to these two teams at some point facing off again. And, man, that'll be such a fun one. Ram Showcase says, I'm really impressed with the Panthers' game plan in this game, honestly. They just didn't go those wild plays like last time. Oh, they didn't get those wild plays like last time. Yeah, I talked about it earlier of, like, the Panthers, they talked about it on the broadcast, how many times that they go for it, and that's just kind of their MO of what they do. And when they played the Rams this time, they were 0 for 3 on those fourth downs. And the first one of the game, I was kind of surprised they went for it that early on, but I guess they were playing with house money, and that set the Rams scoring drive up. But their first drive of the game, they went for it, and the Rams stopped it, and that set the tone for the fourth down defense for the Rams to be able to keep them to 0 conversions on fourth down. That was huge. And keep the Panthers under 100 yards rushing. That was another big thing. I talked about it earlier. Like, it really is strange when you look at the two games between the Panthers and the Rams. Both of them were decided by 3 points. One game was 31-28, the other 34-31. But the games were so different in it. Like, they really were. The Panthers' offensive approach really wasn't as much of, let me like just keep pounding the run. They ran it 40 times in the first matchup. This time, between both the Rams and the Panthers, it was like 40 attempts between both of them. It was a lot more of just those big explosive plays that they ran into, not on like third and fourth downs, but just some deep balls that they had and some opportunities like the block punt to set up some scores. So definitely a completely different model for how this game went, but the scores were very similar. I'm just glad that the Rams were able to come out with a win. And I don't remember who said it. A Rams fan said it, and I thought it was a good point, where the way that this game ended with the Rams winning against the Panthers on the drive that they did is like the way the Panthers game should have gone had Stafford not fumbled the ball and it wasn't all rainy like the first matchup. Like, the Rams were driving the same way in that first matchup that they lost, and then Stafford fumbled and the game was over after that. But, like, we almost got to see an alternate universe of what would have happened if Stafford didn't fumble and he just was able to keep going. And then going back to that Eagles game last year again, of how similar the last drive that the Rams had felt to the Rams drive that they had against the Eagles last year and how that ended. So just really glad that we came out with the win here at the end of the day. Glad that we weren't the ones getting the win in the regular season and losing the postseason. Like, that's just all that matters there for sure. But yeah, the Panthers really had an impressive game plan, and you can tell that familiarity with like a Jero Evero was there. You could tell like they're just a very scrappy team, and you can tell that they won it. I was talking about it earlier, like the Panthers were frustrating in my opinion at times because I rooted for them to, or I guess I was like rooting against teams like the Niners or the Seahawks or other teams where I'm like, if the Panthers beat this team, it's going to help the Rams playoff seeding. But then the Panthers just like have absolute duds of games at times. But when they played the Rams, like both times, it felt like they played completely up with the competition of the Rams, as well as the Rams kind of making mistakes. So I was definitely impressed with their game plan as well. Paul says, yeah, last time they got 2 TDs on 4th and long, and those really hurt. Like, that was the argument that a lot of people were making this week of why the Rams would beat the Panthers, is like it took 3 Stafford turnovers, which never happens. But it, like, really outside of that, it only happened in that Falcons game and no other games in the regular season. It took those 2 4th and long conversions for touchdowns. It took a 3rd and long conversion for a touchdown. It took Bryce Young being insanely clutch in that first game. Like, all those things, were they really going to repeat themselves? They didn't in every way, but it was just a lot of things where it was like in different ways the Panthers were playing well and we were kind of shooting ourselves in the foot. But this time we came out with a win. So, yeah. Seahawks plus 330, favorite to win the Super Bowl. Rams plus 425, close second favorite. I'll take it. Obviously, odds don't really say, like, they don't know exactly what's going to happen, but they do give you a peek on what the favorites are and all of that. So I'll take it. I'm going to be excited whenever we get to play Seattle, if we can get to that point, whether it be in divisional round championship game, like going back to that Thursday night game with how close we were to winning it, how we should have won it. What was it, like a 16-point lead with 8 minutes left? Like, I just want to rematch those Seahawks. Bryce Young plays like Mahomes against us. He really does. It's just he makes incredibly clutch throws. He's had some of these throws around, like again that one to Coker, the last one that he threw in the end zone. We've seen Matthew Stafford and the Rams run that play, and I remember particularly them doing that against the Falcons back in 2022 to Cooper Kupp. Just randomly, I remember that, and we've seen veteran quarterbacks try to do that throw, and they'll miss it 9 times out of 10. Like that's got to be right on the money, because Cam Curl was right there with Jalen Coker, and Bryce Young just absolutely put it in the only spot that it could have been while he's falling away. And that's just the weird thing about the Panthers. It's like at times they play like their record shows, and at other times it's like, geez, how does this team not have more wins? But sometimes it does feel like he plays like Mahomes against us. Anyone know how bad Stafford's hand is? Any reports on him? I haven't seen anything yet, but Matthew Stafford is one of those guys that really doesn't talk about injuries too much, doesn't blame things on injuries, also is usually like, oh yeah, I'm fine, even if he has cracked ribs like he did last year, and he'll play through it. So I'm sure that's what he's going to say. He'll probably say something like, stung a little bit in the game, but I got back out there. Like, it's fine. I'll be good to go. Like, that's probably what he'll say, even if it's really hurting him, even if it's a broken finger. Stafford's going to be out there next round. I feel very confident about that. Okay, yes, Rams QB Matthew Stafford injured his throwing hand, getting it bent back after hitting a defender's arm, but he played through it and will be sore. Yeah, but we obviously know Matthew Stafford, even if he had a broken bone on him, he'll still try to find a way to throw the football. So I feel pretty confident that he's going to be able to play next week for sure. But it didn't feel like it threw off too many of his throws today. I know he had some missed throws here and there, but it also just felt like the way that the Panthers were pressuring him and bringing those blitzes to where I was like, I don't know how much of that's on the finger, but it was crazy how like right after he hurt his finger, he threw an absolute dot to Puka Nacua. Obviously that one gets dropped, but it's like, that's Matthew Stafford for you. As Cooper Kupp said, like, it feels like Matthew Stafford gets better when he gets hurt. So it's like you almost won him playing hurt. Recovery and recharge. Let's get ready to fight again next week. Go Rams. We get to enjoy another week of Rams playoff football. I couldn't be more excited about that. No matter who we play, I'm just excited we get some more Rams football. I disagree with this. That's all I'm going to say. Striker's Corner. Thanks. Yes, I so hope we will be good for next game. I didn't know how bad it was. His throwing and timing were off. And yeah, I mean, I think you can like point to the injury there, but I also do think, again, the Panthers had a good game plan, and it really felt like that really did feel like the team that has brought the most pressure in terms of a blitz standpoint, like trying to bring manufactured pressure on Stafford than any other team this season. That's really what it felt like. They brought so many blitzes, and again, Stafford's usually good against the blitz and makes teams pay, and he did do that a fair amount of times, but there are other times where it made Stafford's internal clock seem like it had to go up a little bit of a tick, and maybe that threw things off too. We do not know how he feels. We don't know how he feels, but I think we can assume that he's just going to play through it, right? Like, that's kind of where I'm at. Willie Bowen says, I'm glad that the LA Rams won that game, but the LA Rams defense needs pressure on the opposing quarterback. Stafford should use the tight ends more. I do think that the Rams' pressure was really good this game. They only got 2 sacks. I think they can obviously still take it up a notch, but I do think the last 3 weeks, the Rams' pass rush has gotten better and up to more of the level we'd expect. There are times, though, in this game where it did feel like they went a little bit quiet, but I felt like there was at least some good pressure for a majority of it, whereas that first game against the Panthers, it felt like Bryce Young was just kind of back there in a clean pocket for a lot of it. So we'll see what ends up happening. But as far as the tight ends usage thing, I don't know. Like, you got Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams out there. Like, I'm not really sure how, if you see like Puka or Devontae out there open, how you don't throw to him. But there are those games where it feels like we're only going to the tight ends, or other games where we're only going to Puka or only going to Devontae. But that's the good thing about this offense. Like, there's a lot of different guys that can eat on that. And even like a game-winning drive that we had put together there, like a crucial clutch catch went to Konate Muntfield, and the biggest catch went to Colby Parkinson to be able to win the game. And it's like the Rams had Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, and those are the 2 guys that made some big plays on that last drive, and one of the biggest plays on the last drive to be able to win the game. So I feel like that's how deep the Rams are. And I don't know, it's hard to make it formulaic to be able to use tight ends more, or use, like, people talked about that earlier on in the season of like the Rams are only targeting Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, and it's like it's hard to find that balance, I guess, to please everybody. The hand didn't bother him, but it could be adrenaline. Hopefully not. Either way, I fully expect him to play next week for sure. Revenge is sweet. It certainly is, Willie. True, I guess I was looking at it where Stafford played through it, but it was maybe worse than he let on. I definitely assume any injury Matthew Stafford talks about or people try to get him to talk about is worse than what he leads on because he really just downplays them all the time. Like we found out in that Super Bowl season when the Rams won the Super Bowl that Stafford was only playing at 60%. And it's like that came out in the middle, like late portion in the no-win November part of the season. It's like, oh, like we had no idea about this because Stafford just plays through those injuries. So we're probably going to lose to the Eagles. At least I see it. Oh, so yeah, Wi-Fi, you're a Niners fan. You don't feel super confident about the Eagles game. I actually picked the 49ers to win that game for if that gives you any sort of hope. But I'm obviously a Rams fan, so we'll see how that ends up going. Not worried about the Philadelphia Pigeons. Yeah, again, the Rams were up 26-7 on this team. They had 2 blocked field goals in that game against the Eagles, and they still almost won. Like people talk about the way the Rams collapsed. That's fair. Like you shouldn't collapse in that scenario, even though it was early on in the year. But even if you take one of those blocked kicks away, one of those blocked field goals away from the Rams, or from the Eagles rather, the Rams still win that game. So it's like I feel pretty good about playing the Eagles. I almost want to go back to Philadelphia and beat them there because, as Willie Bowen said, revenge is very sweet. So I'm done with that tush push. It feels like it hasn't been as effective this year, but yeah, definitely a very boring play for me. Maybe the Rams are another pass rusher away, like a defensive tackle or defensive end type. I don't know. It depends. I think their pass rush was good this game. It's hard because the Rams pass rush set such a high standard in the first playoffs, almost breaking the playoff sack record in only 2 games, having 9 sacks against the Vikings in the wild card round last year. Like the bar is set so high to where even if they have a good pass rush performance from a pressure standpoint, because it's not just about sacks, it's about pressures too. It's like people can be disappointed. I mean, adding a defensive tackle or a defensive end, sure, that would help for sure. But like, I don't really know if that makes them like, I guess if they're that away from being a good pass rush, I guess. I don't think we need another rusher. Coverage just needs to play up, and then our pressures become sacks. Have to play complete on defense. I do think the secondary definitely needs to take those steps up. And when you go back to that Bucs game on primetime where the Rams just had a heyday there at SoFi Stadium, that was a great example of the Rams coverage and pass rush working in tandem. Rams pass rush in that game, I would have to go back and look. Let me actually do that. I think they had 6 sacks, if I can remember, in that game. And in that game, Emmanuel Forbes had 5 pass breakups, had the interception. Kobe Durant had the interception. So that was a really good example of like the rushing coverage working together. So the Rams got 4 sacks on the Bucs in that game, where the Rams beat the Bucs 34-7. So that is kind of a good example of the rushing coverage working together. There have been times where it's like I really can't blame the secondary of the Rams when they have all day the quarterbacks do like 7 or 8 seconds to be able to throw it and run around. But then there's other times where it's like we get immediate pass rush and the ball still somehow gets out to a wide open guy. So definitely a little give and take there for sure. I think the 49ers have a chance, and I hate the 49ers. I would honestly share that exact same sentiment. That's exactly what I would say. I think they have a chance too. I do think that they beat the Eagles tomorrow. I am probably not one of the many people that think that. There's probably not a lot of people picking the 49ers tomorrow, but yeah, I don't like them either, and I think they probably will win. We need bigger cornerbacks. I mean, Akello is pretty big. Emmanuel Forbes is pretty big as far as length. He's obviously not crazy filled out, but I think it's more than just size. But it definitely shows up if you got smaller corners against bigger receivers like today. I just want the Rams to draft the best player available. I agree with you. If you just draft based on need, that usually hurts teams. So hopefully they do that. And it'll be interesting. Obviously, the season is not over, and very thankful for that. But it'll be interesting to see what the Rams do with the 2 first-round picks and different cap space decisions that they have this year and contract extensions. But obviously, you don't have to talk about that now, luckily. Multiple analysts suggest that the LA Rams could trade up for quarterback Fernando Mendoza in the 2026 NFL draft, potentially using their multiple first-round picks to package a deal to move up to the number 1 pick. Honestly, if I'm being real, like I I don't really want the Rams to pick a quarterback in this draft. I also am not incredibly familiar with college football. I know that he's the best quarterback right now, like consensus best quarterback in college football. I don't really want the Rams to pick a quarterback, but if I'm being honest, I don't really think that the Rams know really what they want to do with those picks yet. Like they're scouting, they still have like team scouting going on, but like they're in the middle of a playoff run. So there's definitely a lot of time left, but interesting opinion there for sure. I like Forbes as the second best cornerback. I do too. I definitely prefer him there rather than being the number one guy. He's had flashes of doing well. This game, he played a lot better than last game. I think last game he got beat for 2 touchdowns, had over 100 yards let up. In this game, I think it was only like 27 yards that he let up and no touchdowns. Definitely played better this game. But that is about going to do it here for this post-game reaction. Thank you all for being patient, for having this be a little bit later. Expect more Rams content. I'm still trying to do about a video a day in some sort of content form, so be on the lookout for that. My game preview will be out on Tuesday for whoever we end up playing, but enjoy playoff football, guys. It's a fun time just to be an NFL fan in general. So hope you guys have a great night. Enjoy this Rams win. Sleep